Blade Runner's smartest trick is that the robots are not robots at all. They are living bodies with blood, sweat, fear, and grief. Once you accept that, the scary part is not hardware. The scary part is paperwork. Ridley Scott's film, released in 1982, imagines Los Angeles in 2019. The city is soaked in rain, clogged with pollution, and dominated by corporate power. Off-world colonies are sold as bright opportunity. Earth is left to rot. In that world, the Tyrell Corporation manufactures replicants, bioengineered humanoids built for labor, war, and servitude in those colonies. A group of advanced Nexus 6 replicants returns to Earth illegally. A former police operative, Rick Deckard, is forced back into service. His job is to retire them. Notice the language. Nobody says kill. The euphemism is part of the technology. The key idea is simple and still unsettling. These replicants are close enough to human that you cannot spot them by looking. They do not clank or spark or reveal chrome beneath torn skin. They bruise, they bleed, they feel pain. They also speak fluently, plan strategically, and respond emotionally. So society needs a boundary marker that is not visual biology. It needs a procedure. That procedure is the Voight-Kampff test. It is a machine-assisted interview that watches involuntary physiological reactions. The film emphasizes eyes, pupil response, stress, and the tiny leaks of emotion that happen under pressure. Blade Runner turns personhood into something that can be decided in a room by a script, a lens, and a badge. Here's the first big scientific tension. Building a mechanical robot is hard, but conceptually clean. You can point to motors, sensors, and code. Building a biological adult human is a different category of hard. It demands developmental biology, tissue engineering, neuroscience, endocrinology, immunology, and social training, all working together. The film quietly asks you to believe that Tyrell can manufacture adults with complete minds, not babies that grow up, adults who arrive speaking language, controlling their bodies, doing skilled jobs, and carrying coherent personalities. That is the biggest leap in the entire premise. Real human bodies are not assembled like appliances. They emerge through development. Cells differentiate, tissues organize, nerves wire into muscles and sense organs. Immune systems learn what counts as self. Brains form across years of embodied interaction, feedback, sleep, play, failure, and social contact. Even if you could grow an adult body quickly, the mind is not a simple upload. DNA can specify proteins and broad structure. It does not directly encode a mature autobiographical self. When you meet a replicant like Roy Batty, you are meeting poetry, strategy, and philosophy inside a combat-ready body. That is not a tiny software feature. That is a whole developmental pipeline the movie never shows. And yet Blade Runner is clever about this gap. It does not try to teach you the lab method. It shows consequences. It shows fragments, eyes being fabricated, photographs treasured, serial numbers, interviews, bodies. The world feels like a place where the invention already happened, and institutions have adjusted around it. A second major idea is that replicants are not one generic artificial person. They are a product line. Nexus 6 models are engineered for roles. Roy is a combat model. Pris is called a basic pleasure model. Zora is tied to off-world labor and survival. Leon is physically powerful but emotionally volatile. Rachel is experimental, with implanted memories and no idea she is artificial. That product line logic is one of the film's most believable corporate details. Real industries segment markets. They tune performance and risk. They ship versions. Blade Runner treats artificial people the same way, and it lands like a punch. Still, the biology gets convenient when it comes to enhancement. Replicants are stronger and more resilient than humans, but they look perfectly human. Strength is not a single dial you turn up. More force demands more muscle mass, but also stronger tendons, denser bones, tougher joints, higher cardiovascular capacity, better heat management, and different metabolic limits. If Leon can overpower trained adults with ease, his connective tissue must survive those loads. If Roy can leap rooftops while injured, his pain systems and circulation must be extraordinary. The film keeps it close to human scale, which helps the noir tone, but the clean combination of looks identical and is upgraded remains underexplained. Now consider the 4-year lifespan. The Nexus 6 line has a built-in expiration date, apparently for control. Tyrell presents it as irreversible. In story terms, it is a perfect timer. In biological terms, it is suspiciously neat. Real organisms fail through messy interacting processes: cancer risk, immune breakdown, infections, vascular problems, neurodegeneration, organ failure, metabolic collapse. You could imagine engineering shorter life. You might limit cell replication, accelerate senescence, or introduce a vulnerability that triggers systemic failure. But those interventions would usually create visible pathology and variability. Some individuals would crash early, others would linger, symptoms would differ. Instead, Blade Runner's replicants remain spectacular until the end, as if the body holds perfection and suddenly runs out of lease. Roy is near the end of his designed life, yet he is still powerful enough to dominate Deckard physically. He survives extreme injury, he keeps going through sheer intensity. That works emotionally, but it treats biology like a precise corporate clock. A perfect expiration date is more mythic than realistic. The most emotionally devastating science fiction move is memory implantation. Rachel believes she is human because she has childhood memories. Deckard reveals they were borrowed from Tyrell's niece and implanted. In that moment, the film makes identity feel like an engineered product, not a natural birthright. Scientifically, memory is not a folder you copy and paste. Human memory is distributed across networks. It is tied to sensory cues, emotion, body knowledge, and later reinterpretation. Childhood memories are not just images. They are embedded in continuity, relationships, cultural context, attachment, fear responses, and learned habits. For an implant to truly function, it would need to do more than insert scenes. It would need to create ownership. It would need to make the memory feel like mine, not merely known. It would need to prevent contradictions from tearing the self apart. The film treats that transfer as too portable and too stable, yet it also nails something psychologically true. When Rachel learns the memories are not hers, they do not vanish. They remain emotionally real, even as their status as evidence collapses. The pain comes from that mismatch. Experience still lives in her, but the story of who she is becomes uncertain. Photographs amplify this theme. Leon hoards them. Rachel depends on them. Deckard studies them. The pictures become external memory prosthetics, props that stabilize a belief in a past. That is not how human development works, but it is a haunting metaphor for how identity can be scaffolded. Then we return to the Voight-Kampff test, the film's diagnostic boundary. Its basic assumption is that empathy is deficient in replicants, and that deficiency has a measurable physiological signature. Ask morally loaded questions. Watch the eye. Measure stress. Sort the subject into human or non-human. The weakness is not just technical, it is social. The opening test is not a calm experiment, it is an interrogation. Leon is a fugitive. His life depends on passing. Anxiety alone can spike people response and arousal. Anger can mimic guilt. Trauma can blunt affect. Neurodivergent people can respond atypically. A trained subject might learn to manage the tells. Even the film admits uncertainty. Rachel takes many more questions to classify. That implies the system is probabilistic, not definitive. And yet the society treats it as strong enough to authorize killing. That is the chilling realism. Not that the test is perfect, but that institutions act as if it is. Blade Runner understands that intelligence testing is also performance. Minds are not directly inspected. They are inferred through conversation, timing, cooperation, deception, and stress. Deckard does not run a blood test. He runs a scripted social encounter. The test provokes the behavior it claims to measure, and that is true of many real assessment systems. The film's obsession with eyes is more than style, too. Eyes really are information-rich. They reveal attention, fatigue, arousal, fear, intoxication, and neurological function. They are also among the hardest organs to fabricate convincingly, because they combine optics, wet tissue, immune constraints, fine motor control, and subtle expressiveness. A scene set in an eye manufacturing lab suggests something important about world building. Tyrell's achievement is not one magic machine. It is an industrial ecology of specialists, subcontractors, and trade secrets. That feels more plausible than a single genius building people from scratch. If the biology is shaky, where is the film most realistic? In emotion and in institutions. The replicant's emotional development makes sense for beings with adult abilities, but only a few years of lived experience. That mismatch would create intensity. Not childish intelligence, but young emotional integration. Fear, rage, loyalty, bargaining, and grief would not be glitches. They would be expected outputs of a self-aware organism facing death. Roy's demand, "I want more life," lands because it is not a technical malfunction. It is the natural consequence of making a conscious being disposable. His final mercy toward Deckard is powerful for the same reason. It suggests experience can change him. Not reprogramming, not a secret command, just a mind learning right up to extinction. Finally, Blade Runner makes the boldest realistic claim of all. The meaning of artificial life will be decided as much in law and labor as in laboratories. If artificial biological persons existed, the hardest questions would hit courts, police departments, workplaces, borders, and contracts immediately. Retirement is a social technology. Model numbers are social technologies. Off-world labor is a social technology. The violence is not only physical, it is bureaucratic and linguistic and normalized. So here's the takeaway to carry with you. The closer an artificial being gets to human life, the less science will settle the argument, and the more our systems of power will.